Hello, and welcome to this short presentation from Royal Cyber, where we are going to demonstrate how our proposed rational solution can help you manage software development lifecycle more effectively and with complete traceability from the point requirements are captured to the point they are rolled out as deliverable. For this demo, we will be considering a short case study of an online car trading system which is being developed by teams dispersed over different geographical locations, such as business analyst is hosted in United States, product manager, part of development team, and deployment manager are working from United Kingdom, and the other part of the development team is working from South Africa. The testing team is operating from Australia, and the hosted server is located over the cloud that is accessible to all the stakeholders. So let's get familiar with the roles first. To begin with, we have business analyst who is located in United States and is responsible for gathering requirements from stakeholders, both internal and external, and represent customers' stake throughout the development lifecycle. Then we have the product manager who is based in United Kingdom and is responsible for managing release activities and monitor the progress of the project throughout the development lifecycle. The development team is partly operating from UK and the rest of the team is functional from South Africa and is responsible for coding the application, and when through with their work requests the build manager to deploy the build over the testing server. Build manager, who is also working from UK, on being notified deploys the build on the testing server and informs the testing team of the server's availability. The testing team, which is functioning from Australia, on being notified would resume with their planned testing activities, and once ensured the stability of the application and validate the set of requirements would notify the team of the success of the build. And as a result, eventually the deployment manager would deploy the build over the production server and complete the software development lifecycle. The proposed solution is recommended for all kinds of development methodologies, be it traditional or agile, and so for this demo, we will use Scrum as our development methodology. According to the Scrum practice, the flow of information would be such that the business analyst would initially manage the requirements and then, as a product owner, would continue to populate the product backlog with stories against each requirement. Also during the planning phase, Scrum Master would define the timeline, release, required iterations, and would also define tasks for both development and testing teams. Both the development and testing team would resume with their assigned tasks in parallel, and as the development team completes their task, the team would request the deployment manager to host the build on the testing server. The deployment manager, on being notified, would initiate the build request and would deploy the build on the testing server. Once through with the hosting the application, deployment manager would notify the testing team to resume with their task. The testing team will proceed with their part of testing activities and ultimately update the team with the final status of the build, which would eventually lead to final release of the successful build on the production server. With this, the development cycle completes and our demo will come to the end. Now, having an idea of how this solution works overall, let's put this case study to test and see how we can perform all these activities using different rational tools involved in the solution. To begin with, we have a business analyst who is based in United States and is responsible for requirement management using Rational Requirement Composer as the facilitating tool. From the Rational Requirement Composer interface, the business analyst logs into the system and can create new requirements of several types, including text, use cases, system diagrams, functional and non-functional requirements by simply selecting the type of the requirement. Also, the business analyst can directly import requirements into the system received in other formats. Requirements are managed in the form of projects or collection in this tool, and as we can see, there is an existing list of requirements that is already logged into the system, so let's import new list of requirements that has been received in the form of Word document. To do that, for the project that we need to import, we'll select the import option, browse to the file, and we'll simply import it. And as we can see, the new list of requirements has already been imported. Once the requirement is exported, we can extract multiple new requirements from within this document by simply selecting the area that we want to log as a new requirement. As in this case, we have filed a new requirement from within this document. So for this demo, we will create a new requirement that will be non-functional in nature, and we will use that requirement throughout the development lifecycle. The requirement being posted is to change the title of the page as per the dealer's preference. So we'll make the necessary selections and we'll log this new requirement. To see if our requirement has been properly logged, we'll open it. And with this, the business analyst part comes to the rest, and now as a product owner, the person will log into the team concert and update the product backlog with the stories against each requirement. While creating the new story, product owner would define mandatory attributes to associate this story to a project created in Rational Team Concert, enabling this story to be accessible for Scrum Master during the planning phase. Also, the product owner will define the link between requirement and the story for ensuring the end-to-end traceability. We can now view the new story appearing in the product backlog, and as we point at the newly listed story, we can see the linked requirement appearing in the pop-up window. With this, product owner steps down and the Scrum Master who's responsible for completing the planning phase would come to the play. Scrum Master, who's based in UK, will be using Rational Team Concert to define the project timelines, total number of releases and iterations, and would also define tasks for both development and testing teams. From the Rational Team Concert interface, the Scrum Master will define the project timeline and will define the releases along with all the iterations that are required to deliver the complete system based on the team velocity that is already known to him. Once the release and iteration plans are in place, the product owner, Scrum Master, and Scrum team discuss, prioritize, and associate stories for each planned iteration. As in this case, we are assigning this story to a particular release. As we go to the release backlog listing, and open the concerned release backlog, we would see our new story appearing as an unassigned task under release 1. So at this point, we will assign this story to the first sprint. After assigning the story to the first sprint, we will now create tasks against this story for both development and testing teams. Once we have both the tasks in place, then we are going to assign these tasks to individual developers and test engineers. After assigning the task, to closely monitor their progress, Scrum Master can view the sprint backlog, which lists down the tasks categorized by the engineer's name. And so we can see the progress of the assigned development task by going into the specific developer's profile and seeing the progress of the task. Similarly, we can check the current standings of the assigned task for the testing engineer. With this, the planning phase comes to the end, and now the development and testing activities would start in parallel. So first, we'll look into the development activity. The development team, which is partly located in UK and the rest of it is working from South Africa, would be using RTC Eclipse client for coding of the application and also for the source control management. The developer will first log into the Eclipse client and will then check the tasks that have been assigned to him by the Scrum Master, and accordingly will accept the task. Based on the definition of the task, the developer will fetch the code from the mainstream And once the code is available in the local repository, the developer will begin to modify and make the necessary changes in the code. As per the requirement, the developer will change the title of the page. After making the necessary modification, the developer will start committing the code. So first, the developer has to check in the local version of the files and at the same time associate these files with the particular change set. Once the files are committed, the version of the files have moved from the local machine to the repository workspace, which is a session over the server. Now, to deliver the code to the mainstream so that it becomes accessible to the rest of the team, the developer would first add the comment to this modified file and then associate it to the task that was assigned to him by the Scrum Master. And then eventually would deliver the code to the mainstream and make it accessible to the rest of the development teams across the globe. To ensure the integration of the code, developer can always refetch the files from the mainstream and can see the modifications he made into the new files. At this point, the development team is in position to request build manager for deploying the build on the testing server. But before we do that, we will first see the testing activities that were taking place in parallel to the development activities. The testing team that is operating from Australia would be using Rational Quality Manager, Rational Functional Tester, Rational Performance Tester, and Rational App Scan as their toolset for performing various testing activities. Integrating RFT and RPT with RQM empowers testers to execute their functional and performance testing scripts that are originally based on standalone machines from over the web at any time and from any place of the world. And AppScan helps testers to ensure the robustness of the web application against various online threats. So from the Rational Quality Manager console, the test engineer will log into the system and will first view the assigned task that has been given by the Scrum Master. And then as per the assigned task, the test engineer would first draft the test plan. For this demo, we already have a test plan in place, which is also linked to the requirement. After this, the test engineer would draft test cases against this test plan. Again, we have two of the test cases already jotted down against this test plan. Here you get to define the definition of this test case, also mention the precondition, post conditions, expected results, and can link it to other artifacts, such as this test case is also linked with the development task which was assigned by the Scrum Master. Also contains the link to the requirement for which this test case was drafted. And in our case, we have also linked this test case with the test script of Rational Functional Tester, which exists in another location. This is the path of the script that is hosted in the Rational Functional Tester. Here we can see this highlighted is the script and contains the definition of this script. So when we execute that particular test case from RQM, it would trigger the test case in the Rational Functional Tester. Similarly, we have another test case drafted for validating this requirement, and like the other test case, it has a similar body. It can be linked to the development task and is also associated with the requirement. But this test case is linked with Rational Performance Tester instead of Rational Function Tester. And as we open the test case, we see the path of the Rational Performance Testing script that is located in another machine, and here's the definition of the script. So if we execute this test case from RQM, it would trigger the test script that exists in RPT. So having all the test cases defined and all the test scripts associated to these test cases, the test engineer will draft the test suite now. But for the demo purpose, we have already created the test suite that include test cases we need to execute to validate the requirements. So as we can see, we have included both the test cases that we have previously drafted against the test plan and have related to rational functional tester and rational performance tester. Now, when the testing team would be notified of the test server's availability, the testing engineer will simply execute this test suite to run all the test cases for validating the requirements. And as we already know, the development team has finished their work, so now we will move to Deployment Manager's part. Deployment Manager, who's based in UK, is using Rational Build Forge for catering all the build deployment requests over the remote server. So we will begin from the point we left earlier. After completing their task, the development team would simply make the build request, and based on the mapping defined between the Software Configuration Management tool and the script contained in the Deployment Management tool, build request will trigger a script in Build Management tool that will automatically take care of the build deployment and will notify the stakeholders once the build will be accessible over the hosting server. We can also monitor the progress of the job from within the Build Deployment tool, and similarly can track the status of the build request from within the client. And as the job completes within the Build Forge, we can move back to the Eclipse client and can see the updated status of the build request. Now let's see how the application looked like before the new application was hosted. And we can see the title was RC Concept Car, and after the build has been deployed, the title has changed to Car Zone. And with this, the build has been deployed, and now the deployment manager would notify the testing team of the availability of the testing server. As soon as the testing team based in Australia would be notified of the test server's availability, they will begin with their pre-planned testing activities. And so the test engineer will log into Rational Quality Manager over the web and will simply execute the test suite that have been designed for validating customers' requirement. And as we execute this test suite, then all the test cases and the test scripts that are contained within this test suite will be subjected to the build. While these test cases run, we can see their progress and status appearing on the window. The first two test cases were pointing at the rational functional tester, so if you want to see the status of these test cases, we can directly click on their status and can have a complete view of what happened to them in their functional tester tool, the results and the whole processing involved in it. Similarly, if any of the test case has failed, not only that we can see the complete details from rational functional tester appearing in the Rational Quality Manager, but we can also directly log a defect against this test case. As we are filing this defect from Rational Quality Manager, so we can directly associate this defect to the product backlog or any of the sprint as per the instruction by the Scrum Master. And now, as we have saved this bug and associated to this test case, we can see the linking between the two. Similarly, moving back to the third test case, which was pointing to Rational Performance Tester, as a result we are given an HTML link within RQM that basically brings us all the charts and statistical representation from the Rational Performance Tester indicating how the application behaved on concurrent axis. And this way we have conveniently gathered results both from RFT and RPT using test suites within RQM. Rational Quality Manager also maintains history of the test suite's execution for later follow-ups. From the test suite result list, you can pick the test suite that you want to look into. And here you can see all the information against this test suite is logged. And also that you can look into the history for this particular test suite, as in how many times was this executed and against which release and what were the results. For testing the application against various online threats, the testing team will now use the Rational App Scan. So for doing that, the test engineer will open the Rational App Scan client. First, he would choose to create a new scan against the online application. Here, the test engineer can choose from various bundled templates or also can select any existing template designed for any particular testing, such as SQL injection verification alone, or maybe applying the combination of SQL and HTML injection together. For this demo, we would select regular scan, which comes bundled with IBM Rational App Scan installer. In our case, we are scanning web application, so we will choose that. Then we will provide the link to the application hosted on the test server. Since our application does not require to log in, so we will choose none from the options. Again, we can choose between the default test policy or can have a customized version of a test policy as per our requirements. For this demo, we will resume with the default test policy. Ultimately, we select the nature of this scan and will initiate the scanning. Once the Rational App Scan thoroughly evaluates the application, it provides the user with all the loopholes and vulnerabilities that exist in the code. As in our case, AppScan has identified 3 critical, 2 major and 1 minor issue in the hosted application. Not only the AppScan identifies the issues, but also provide explanation, experts' advice, and recommendations against each vulnerability that has been identified. So by the end of the testing cycle, if the testing team is certain about the stability of the application and through with validating all the requirements, then they would notify the Scrum Master and other relevant stakeholders, which eventually would lead to the final deployment of the application on the production server. In addition to requirement capturing, planning, development, deployment, and testing activities, there are other essential elements for successful software development lifecycle, such as in-context collaboration, monitoring, controlling, and traceability. And as our proposed solution is designed to address all of these lackings from traditional practices, so we are going to show how from any point in the development lifecycle you can perform an end-to-end traceability. So for that, we are going to log into Requirement Management System and check the requirement we created initially. As we can see, from the links panel, we can easily track all the development activities that were performed to implement this functionality. Not only that, we can have a quick view of the implementation activities, but also we can directly access this particular story from the requirement panel. Similarly, we can also see all the testing activities that were performed to validate the implementation as per the requirement. And if I click on the story that was used to implement this requirement, then I would be automatically taken to the story in Rational Team Console interface, where I can see all the tasks that are linked with this story, both for development and testing. Also, we can see the story also contains the link back to the requirement. If I click on the development task, then not only that I can see all the details of the task, but also I can see if there is any defect filed against this development task or the change set that was used by the developer for completing this task. Similarly, if I move back to the story and open the testing team's task, Then I can see all the test cases that were linked to this testing task and can further dig into them for details as per the requirement. This brings us to the end of this demo. Thank you for watching this video, and if you're interested or have any questions, then feel free to contact Royal Cyber representatives. Thank you and have a good day.